$2 million. That's what I paid you people to tell me we're going to lose. The voice exploded through the glass doors of conference room 47B at 1:17 a.m. Anna Whitmore froze, her cleaning cart wheels squeaking to a halt on the marble floor of Sterling & Associates, Manhattan's most prestigious law firm. At 32 years old, she'd been invisible in this building for 2 years. She wasn't supposed to be here this late. The lawyers always left by midnight. But the emergency meeting had run over. Through the frosted glass, she could see 11 lawyers from 5 different countries sitting around the massive conference table. Legal documents scattered everywhere like fallen leaves. A German lawyer shaking his head in defeat. A Japanese attorney staring blankly at his laptop screen. Anna pressed herself against the wall, clutching her worn cleaning cloth. The shy girl who'd once dreamed of arguing cases in courtrooms like this had become invisible in this building for 2 years. The ghost who emptied trash cans and mopped floors while the real world slept. Once, professors had called her brilliant. Now, she was just another shy girl in a uniform that no one bothered to see. But invisibility had its advantages. When you're unseen, you hear things. You see things. Things that powerful people assume no one notices. The angry voice belonged to Damian Cruz. She'd seen his face on magazine covers. Tech billionaire, self-made millionaire, currently fighting the biggest patent lawsuit of his career against Meridian Corporation. The F-22 federal clause doesn't apply here, Cruz, came another voice. This one she recognized immediately. Harold Dent, senior partner, the man who controlled this entire floor. I understand your frustration, but the law is the law. Anna's blood turned cold. Her father had taught her about the F-22 clause. Harold was wrong, dead wrong. She looked around the empty hallway. Then at the red marker someone had left on the nearby shelf. Her heart pounded as she picked it up. What happened next would change everything. Anna waited until the conference room emptied. Damian Cruz had stormed out first, followed by the dejected legal team. Harold Dent was the last to leave, his cold eyes scanning the room one final time before switching off the lights. She slipped inside. The contract was still there on the table, a photocopy of the disputed patent agreement. Anna's hands trembled as she leaned over the document. There, in the bottom right corner, was a signature that made her blood run cold. It looked like her father's signature, but something was wrong. The D in David was slightly different, more angular than her father's flowing style. Someone had forged his signature. David Whitmore had died in a car accident 13 years ago, when Anna was 19 and fresh out of Harvard Law. But this contract was dated only 2 years ago. Someone was using her dead father's identity. Focus, Anna. She shook her head and picked up the red marker. Next to Harold's incorrect reference to the F-22 clause, she wrote, check section 4.7.3. Response deadline under 1998 law, not 2003. If filed in New York State Court, F-22 will apply because dispute originated here. A friend. She set down the marker and backed away from the table. What was she doing? She was a cleaning lady, not a lawyer. She'd graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Law, but that felt like another lifetime now. As she turned to leave, she didn't notice the figure watching from the shadowed doorway. Harold Dent stepped forward after she disappeared down the hallway, his face pale as he photographed her note. He pulled out his phone and typed a message. She knows too much. We have to act fast. But Anna was already gone, pushing her cart toward the service elevator, unaware that she'd just set in motion events that would unravel a decade-old conspiracy. The truth about her father's death was about to surface, and Harold Dent would do anything to keep it buried. Morning erupted in conference room 47B like a thunderstorm. Who wrote this? Damian Cruz held the red-marked contract above his head, his voice echoing off the glass walls. This is exactly what we needed to win this case. The 11 lawyers stared at each other in confusion. The German attorney adjusted his glasses nervously. The Japanese lawyer closed his laptop slowly. No one had an answer. Harold Dent cleared his throat. It could have been a paralegal, or perhaps Or perhaps the cleaning lady, interrupted a young associate. I saw her here last night. Damien's eyes lit up for the first time in weeks. Get her up here. Now. Anna received the call in the basement supply room. Her supervisor looked confused as he handed her the phone. They want you on the 47th floor immediately. She rode the elevator in her faded blue uniform, clutching her cleaning supplies like armor. When the doors opened, 12 pairs of eyes turned toward her. She'd never felt smaller. Did you write this? Damien held up the contract, pointing to the red notation. Anna stared at the floor. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. You shouldn't have what? Harold Dent's voice cut through the room like ice. You're a cleaning lady, not an attorney. You have no business touching legal documents. But Damien raised his hand, silencing Harold. His eyes never left Anna's face. You studied law? Anna hesitated. I used to, but that's in the past. Harold quickly intervened. Cruz, she just got lucky with a guess. We can't base our entire strategy on lucky. Damien's gaze shifted to Harold, suspicion creeping into his voice. Did any of the 11 lawyers in this room think of this approach? Silence was his answer. Damien turned back to Anna. What's your name? Anna Whitmore. Harold's coffee cup slipped from his hand, shattering on the conference table. His face went ashen as the name registered. After all these years, David Whitmore's daughter was standing in his conference room. Whitmore. Damien noticed Harold's reaction. Why does that name seem to bother you, Harold? Anna's heart raced. She glanced at Harold, whose cold stare warned her to stay silent. It's a common name, but the seed of curiosity had been planted in Damien's mind. And wealthy men with good instincts don't ignore their gut feelings. I want to speak with Ms. Whitmore privately, Damien announced. Harold's jaw tightened. Sir, I really don't think. It wasn't a request, Harold. The room cleared reluctantly, Harold's eyes burning into Anna as he left. When they were alone, Damien gestured to a chair. Please sit. Anna perched on the edge of the leather chair, still holding her cleaning cloth. You graduated from Harvard Law, didn't you? Damien said quietly. Anna's composure cracked. How did you? Lucky guess. But more importantly, why aren't you practicing law? For the first time in years, Anna felt tears threaten to surface. It's complicated. I have time. And for reasons she couldn't explain, Anna found herself trusting this stranger. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was exhaustion from carrying secrets for so long. But she began to talk. That evening, Anna returned to her small apartment in Queens. Her 20-year-old sister Sarah sat at the kitchen table, methodically arranging puzzle pieces by color. She didn't look up when Anna entered. Sarah rarely spoke anymore, withdrawing into silence after witnessing their father's death 13 years ago. The trauma had stolen her voice, though doctors said there was hope for recovery with time and stability. Anna had been her guardian since turning 19, working multiple jobs to keep them afloat while finishing law school. Anna opened the refrigerator to find expired milk and empty shelves. On the counter, a red envelope waited, the final eviction notice. They had 1 week. She sat down across from Sarah and opened the drawer where she kept their father's last possession, his old law book. The cover was starting to peel from years of handling. Tonight, as she opened it, a corner of the aging binding came loose, revealing something she'd never noticed before. Tucked between the cover and the first page was a thin piece of paper, yellow with age. In her father's urgent handwriting, if anything happens to me, find box 247 at First National Bank. Password is Sarah's birthday. The evidence is all there. Don't trust Harold Dent. He's not who he pretends to be. Anna's hand shook. She'd never seen this note before. How had she missed it all these years? Sarah looked up from her puzzle for the first time that evening, her large eyes focusing on Anna's face. She pointed to the paper and spoke her first words of the day, Daddy's secret. Anna stared at her sister. You knew about this. Sarah nodded and returned to her puzzle, but Anna caught her whisper, bad man at Daddy's work. The pieces weren't just falling into place on Sarah's puzzle. They were falling into place in Anna's mind, too. Harold Dent had been her father's law partner. He'd been at the funeral, offering sympathy and empty promises to help with Anna's law school expenses. promises that never materialized, applications that mysteriously disappeared, financial aid that was inexplicably denied. Anna looked at her sister, then at the note, then at the eviction notice. Everything was connected. Harold hadn't just abandoned them after her father's death. He'd actively worked to destroy Anna's future. But why? The answer waited in a bank vault, in a box marked 247. The next morning, Anna called in sick to work and took the subway to First National Bank. Her hands trembled as she entered Sarah's birthday, April 15th, into the safety deposit box keypad. The lock clicked open. Inside box 247, she found a USB drive and a sealed letter marked for Anna's eyes only. But there was more, a second envelope labeled emergency instructions and a small digital camera with a note, photos of meetings December 2010 to March 2011. Anna's heart pounded as she opened the main letter with shaking fingers. My dearest Anna, if you're reading this, then Harold has succeeded, and I am no longer here to protect you. I discovered that Harold has been taking bribes from major corporations to leak confidential client information. I had evidence and was planning to report him to the State Bar Association. But Harold learned of my plans. He made threats, not just against me, but against you and Sarah. I realized he would never let me expose him, and he would never let you become a lawyer who might discover his crimes. The USB contains all my evidence, financial records, recorded conversations, email exchanges. Everything needed to prove Harold's corruption and the lengths he went to silence me. My car accident was no accident, Anna, and your struggles to become a lawyer were no coincidence. Harold has been orchestrating everything from the shadows. The camera contains photos from my final investigation. I followed Harold to 3 separate meetings with Meridian executives. I recorded their conversations from outside their hotel rooms. I documented cash exchanges, envelope drops, and coded phone calls. In the emergency envelope, you'll find the contact information for FBI agent Maria Santos. She was working with me on building a case against Harold. Show her everything. She'll know what to do. Be careful, my darling girl. But don't give up your dreams. Justice is waiting for you to claim it. Anna clutched the USB, her father's words echoing in her mind. She opened the emergency envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was Agent Santos' business card, along with a handwritten note from her father. Maria knows the truth about my death. She's been waiting 13 years for this evidence. There was also a key small, brass, with a tag reading Storage Unit 47, Brooklyn Self-Storage. Her father had hidden even more evidence. Anna looked at the digital camera and scrolled through the photos. Her father had been thorough. Dozens of images showing Harold meeting with Meridian executives in parking garages, hotel lobbies, and restaurants. In several photos, she could see Harold accepting thick envelopes, his face clearly visible. The final photo was time-stamped March 15th, 2011, just 2 days before her father's death. It showed Harold standing next to a black sedan, talking intensely with a man Anna didn't recognize. The man was pointing at Harold's car in what looked like a threatening gesture. Everything made sense now. The mysterious rejection from the bar exam. The financial aid applications that vanished. The law firms that never called back despite her perfect grades. Harold Dent hadn't just destroyed her father. He'd spent 13 years systematically destroying her future to protect his secrets. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated the power of an invisible woman who had nothing left to lose. Anna pocketed the USB, grabbed the camera, and headed back to Sterling and Associates. It was time to become visible. That night, Anna waited until the building emptied before making her move. She used her cleaning access to enter Harold's private office on the 50th floor. Her hands moved quickly, inserting the USB into his computer and beginning the file transfer. The evidence was overwhelming. Years of bribes from Meridian Corporation, leaked strategies from dozens of cases, and most damning of all, email exchanges discussing the David Whitmore problem and how to neutralize future threats from his daughter. The files were halfway transferred when footsteps echoed in the hallway. Harold Dent appeared in the doorway, his usually composed demeanor replaced by cold fury. "What do you think you're doing?" Anna tried to hide the USB behind her back. "I was just cleaning your office, sir." Harold stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "Anna Whitmore, daughter of David Whitmore. I've known who you were from the day you started working here." The pretense was over. Anna straightened her shoulders. "Then you know why I'm here. Your father was a naive fool who thought he could destroy me," Harold said, circling his desk like a predator. "He had no idea how powerful my connections really were. Powerful enough to murder him." Harold's laugh was cold. "Murder is such an ugly word. I prefer to think of it as removing an obstacle. Just like I've been removing obstacles to your legal career for the past decade." The admission hung in the air between them. Anna felt the rage she'd carried for years crystallizing into something harder, sharper. "You destroyed my family. You took away my father, my future, your what? Your dreams." Harold moved closer. "Dreams are for people who matter, Anna. You're nobody. You clean toilets. You empty trash. You're invisible." Anna's hand closed around the USB. The file transfer was complete. "You're right," she said quietly. "I am invisible, but that's exactly why you're going to lose." Harold's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Anna smiled for the first time in 10 years. "Because invisible people see everything. And I've been watching you for 3 years, Harold. I know about your late-night meetings, your encrypted phone calls, your offshore accounts. You have nothing. I have everything." Anna held up the USB. "And now I have a billionaire tech CEO who's very interested in learning why his lawyers keep losing cases they should win." Harold's face went pale. "You wouldn't dare. Try me." The two stared at each other across the office, the powerful lawyer and the invisible cleaning lady. But in that moment, the balance of power had shifted. Anna walked toward the door, then paused. "By the way, Harold, the F-22 clause? My father taught me about that when I was 16. You've been giving your clients wrong advice for years." She left Harold standing alone in his office, holding the USB that would destroy him and clutching the truth that would finally set her free. And it didn't go home that night. Instead, she sat in an all-night diner in Midtown, staring at her phone, trying to work up the courage to call Damian Cruz. What was she thinking? A billionaire CEO wouldn't take a call from a cleaning lady at 2 a.m. But the evidence was burning in her hands, and Harold would realize what she'd done by morning. She had maybe 6 hours before he started covering his tracks. Finally, she dialed. "Mr. Cruz? This is Anna Whitmore. I have information about your case that you need to hear immediately." "Anna, it's 2 in the morning. Can't this wait? Harold Dent has been selling your legal strategies to Meridian Corporation for the past 6 months. I have proof." The line went silent for so long Anna thought he'd hung up. Then, "Where are you?" "I'm coming to get you." 20 minutes later, a black Tesla pulled up outside the diner. Damian Cruz stepped out wearing jeans and a Harvard sweatshirt, looking more like a graduate student than a tech billionaire. Anna realized she'd never seen him without a suit before. He slid into the booth across from her, and she was struck by how tired he looked. The confident businessman from the conference room was gone, replaced by someone who looked like he'd been carrying the weight of the world. "You look like hell," Anna said, then immediately regretted her bluntness. Damian managed a weak smile. "Charming. You called me at 2 a.m. to insult my appearance." Despite everything, Anna almost smiled back. "Sorry. It's been a long night. Tell me about it." Damian gestured to the waitress for coffee. "So, Harold Dent is selling my legal strategies. Start from the beginning." Anna slid the USB across the table, along with her father's camera. "Harold didn't just betray you," she said quietly. "He's been running a corruption scheme for years, taking bribes, leaking information, destroying anyone who threatens to expose him." Damian plugged the USB into his laptop. His expression grew darker with each file he opened. Financial records showing payments from Meridian. Email chains discussing Cruz case strategy updates. Audio files of Harold's phone calls giving play-by-play accounts of confidential strategy meetings. "My God," Damian whispered. "He hasn't just been sabotaging my case. He's been sabotaging dozens of cases." The Patterson merger, the Williams estate, the Carson bankruptcy. He stopped scrolling and looked up at Anna. This goes back years. How did you get all this? Anna took a deep breath. My father gathered most of it before Harold had him killed. Damien's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. Your father, David Whitmore. He was Harold's partner 13 years ago. He discovered the corruption and was going to expose it. Anna's voice caught. Harold had him murdered and then spent the next 13 years making sure I could never become a lawyer who might discover the truth. Damien set down his coffee and studied Anna's face. For the first time, he really saw her. Not the cleaning lady in the uniform, but the brilliant woman underneath. You graduated from Harvard Law, he said. It wasn't a question. Anna nodded. Summa cum laude. But I could never take the bar exam. Every time I applied, something went wrong. Documents got lost, fees got misprocessed, appointments got canceled. I thought I just wasn't smart enough, wasn't persistent enough. But it was Harold blocking you. Every step of the way. Anna pulled out her father's letter and showed Damien the final paragraph. My father knew this would happen. He knew Harold would try to destroy me to protect himself. Damien read the letter twice, his jaw tightening with each word. When he finished, he looked at Anna with something that might have been respect. Why are you showing me this? You could take this to the FBI yourself. You could be the hero of your own story. Anna was quiet for a moment, stirring sugar into coffee she didn't want. Because I need help, she admitted. You're right. I could go to the FBI, but Harold has connections everywhere. Judges, prosecutors, police commissioners. When I was nobody, I was safe because I was invisible. But the moment I become a threat, he'll destroy you like he destroyed your father. Exactly. But you're Damien Cruz. When you talk, people listen. You have resources, connections, protection. And more importantly, Anna looked directly into his eyes. You have as much reason to want Harold destroyed as I do. Damien was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, more personal. My father was a lawyer too, he said suddenly. Corporate defense. When I was 16, our family went through a bitter custody battle after my parents divorced. My father was supposed to represent me, to fight for what I wanted. Anna waited, sensing this was important. Instead, he took bribes from my mother's attorney, sold out my testimony, my preferences, my future. I ended up in a situation that Damien stopped, the old pain flickering across his face. I swore I'd never trust lawyers again. Built my whole company around that principle. Handle everything internally. Never rely on outside counsel. But you had to hire Sterling and Associates for the patent case. Patent law is too specialized. I had no choice. Damien's laugh was bitter. And here I am again, betrayed by another corrupt lawyer. Some things never change. Anna reached across the table and touched his hand. Some things do change. We're going to stop him. Damien looked down at their hands, then back at her face. What do you want from this, Anna? Really? Justice for your father? Revenge against Harold? A chance to practice law? Anna thought about it seriously. All of that. But mostly, I want to make sure no one else goes through what we went through. No more families destroyed by corrupt lawyers. No more brilliant minds crushed because they threatened the wrong people. Damien nodded slowly, then extended his hand across the table. Partners. Anna shook it firmly. Partners. For the first time since her father's death, Anna wasn't fighting alone. And for the first time since his own father's betrayal, Damien had found someone he could trust completely. They spent the next 3 hours planning Harold's downfall. The next morning, Damien called an emergency meeting with Sterling and Associates. But this time, he'd invited more than just Harold's legal team. FBI agent Maria Santos sat in the corner, her recorder ready. Representatives from the New York State Bar Association occupied the back row. A federal prosecutor had flown in from Washington overnight. The conference room filled with Harold's entire legal team, plus executives from Meridian Corporation who had flown in under the impression they were attending a routine strategy session. Harold entered confidently, his usual commanding presence filling the room. He wore his most expensive suit and carried himself like a man who'd never lost a case. He had no idea that his world was about to crumble. "Gentlemen," Damien began, standing at the head of the conference table, "I've discovered some interesting information about our case." Harold smiled patronizingly. "I'm sure whatever concerns you have, Cruz, we can address them through proper channels." "I don't think proper channels are going to help you with this one, Harold." Damien gestured toward the door. Anna walked in, no longer wearing her cleaning uniform. Instead, she wore a borrowed business suit from Damien's assistant and carried a briefcase that contained 13 years of evidence. The transformation was remarkable, from invisible cleaning lady to confident legal professional in a single day. Harold's coffee cup slipped from his fingers, shattering on the conference table. His face went ashen as 13 years of careful planning collapsed in an instant. "What is the meaning of this?" Harold's voice cracked slightly, betraying his panic. "Meet my new legal consultant," Damien announced to the room. "Anna Whitmore, Harvard Law, summa cum laude, daughter of the late David Whitmore, former partner of this firm." A murmur ran through the room. Several of the older lawyers remembered David Whitmore. His sudden death had been a shock to the legal community. Anna opened her briefcase and placed a stack of documents on the table with deliberate precision. "Ladies and gentlemen, for the past 13 years, Harold Dent has been accepting bribes from opposing parties to deliberately sabotage his own clients' cases." She turned to address the Meridian executives directly, her voice clear and professional. "That includes your case, gentlemen. Every strategy session you attended, every piece of confidential information you received about Mr. Cruz's legal approach, it all came from Harold. He's been playing both sides against each other while collecting fees from everyone." One of the Meridian executives, a silver-haired man named Peterson, leaned forward. "You're saying we've been cheating?" "With Harold's enthusiastic assistance, yes. Which makes all your evidence inadmissible and opens you to criminal charges for conspiracy, bribery, and racketeering under federal law." Agent Santos spoke from her corner. "Mr. Peterson, I'd recommend you contact your legal department immediately. We'll need to discuss immunity deals for anyone willing to cooperate with our investigation." The room erupted in chaos. The Meridian team began arguing amongst themselves in urgent whispers. Harold's own lawyers stared at him in shock and horror, realizing their careers might be destroyed by association. Junior associates quietly began calculating how to distance themselves from the fallout. "This is all fabricated," Harold shouted, standing abruptly. His usual composure was completely gone. "She's nobody, a failed law student with a grudge. You can't seriously be listening to what, Harold?" Anna's voice cut through his protests like ice. "To the truth? To evidence? To your own recorded conversations?" She pulled out a small digital recorder, her father's device, and pressed play. Harold's voice filled the room, crystal clear. "David, you always were too naive for this business. Some problems require permanent solutions." The silence that followed was deafening. Anna continued, "That recording was made 3 days before my father died in what you all assumed was a car accident. Harold arranged that accident to prevent my father from exposing this corruption ring." Harold's face went white. "You can't prove—" "Actually, Harold, I can prove everything." Anna smiled calmly and opened her laptop. 13 years of digital evidence. Bank records showing bribes totaling over $15 million. Email exchanges between you and Meridian executives planning strategy against your own clients. Phone records proving you leaked confidential information to opposing counsel in 47 different cases. She clicked to another screen. Audio recordings of you ordering the sabotage of evidence in a Morrison class action suit. Video surveillance of you accepting cash payments in the Steinberg divorce case. And most damning of all, Anna turned the laptop toward the room. On the screen was security footage from Harold's own office, showing him making the phone call that led to her father's death. A confession to murder, recorded by the security system Harold himself installed to watch his employees. The Meridian executives were frantically making phone calls. 3 of Harold's associates had quietly slipped out of the room. The remaining lawyers sat in stunned silence, realizing they'd witnessed the end of one of New York's most powerful legal careers. Agent Santos stood up. Harold Dent, you're under arrest for conspiracy, bribery, racketeering, and first-degree murder. She began reading his rights as two federal marshals entered the room. Harold looked around desperately, seeking support from colleagues who were already backing away from him. You don't understand. I built this firm. I made careers. I have connections you can't imagine. Had connections, Anna corrected quietly. Past tense. Most of them are about to be indicted alongside you. As Harold was led away in handcuffs, he stopped at the door and turned back to Anna. For a moment, his mask slipped completely, and she saw him for what he really was, a small, frightened man who'd spent decades hiding behind power and corruption. Your father was a fool to trust the system, he said bitterly. And you're a fool to think this changes anything. Anna stood up, meeting his gaze without flinching. Maybe, but I'd rather be a fool with integrity than a coward with blood on my hands. Harold Dent, senior partner, power broker, destroyer of lives, was led away in handcuffs, leaving behind a room full of people whose world had just fundamentally changed. Anna sat back down at the conference table, officially registered as special counsel for cruise industries. For the first time in 13 years, she was exactly where she belonged, in a room where justice mattered more than power, where truth meant more than money, and where the invisible cleaning lady had become the most important person at the table. The trial made national headlines. Cleaning lady exposes decade-long legal conspiracy. Harvard graduate brings down corrupt law firm. The invisible woman who saved justice. Ms. Whitmore, the judge, a stern woman in her 60s, leaned forward. I understand you passed the New York bar examination 8 years ago, but were never able to register due to administrative issues. That's correct, Your Honor. Issues that we now know were deliberately created by the defendant to prevent me from practicing law. Anna had spent years wondering why her bar registration had been mysteriously blocked, despite passing all requirements. Only now did the pieces fit together. Harold had used his influence to keep her from ever becoming a licensed attorney. In light of the extraordinary circumstances of this case, the judge continued, in Ms. Whitmore's proven legal expertise, this court grants temporary permission for her to represent Mr. Cruz as special counsel for the duration of these proceedings. Your Honor, Anna stood to address the court. This case represents more than just patent theft. It represents a systematic corruption of our legal system by those who believe they were above the law. She gestured toward the evidence table, stacked high with documents. Harold Dent didn't just betray his clients. He murdered my father to protect his schemes. He destroyed my career to prevent me from discovering his crimes. He perverted justice itself for personal gain. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, leaned forward. Ms. Whitmore, these are serious allegations. With serious evidence, Your Honor. Anna picked up a folder. Financial records showing bribes totaling over $12 million. Recorded phone calls between Harold and Meridian executives. Email exchanges planning my father's death. She turned to face Harold, who sat at the defendant's table looking smaller than she'd ever seen him. But most importantly, Your Honor, we have a truth. And the truth is that no one, no matter how powerful, how connected, how untouchable they think they are, is above justice. The trial lasted 3 days. The jury deliberated for 47 minutes. Guilty on all charges. Harold Dent was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Meridian Corporation faced criminal charges and bankruptcy. The evidence Anna had uncovered led to investigations of corruption in 17 other major law firms. But for Anna, the most important moment came when the judge made a special announcement. Ms. Whitmore, in light of your extraordinary service to the legal profession and your role in exposing this conspiracy, the New York State Bar Association is fast-tracking your full licensure. Congratulations, counselor. Anna felt her father's presence in that moment, as if he were standing beside her, finally at peace. 1 year later, Anna stood before a packed auditorium at Harvard Law School, delivering the commencement address for new graduates. I spent 10 years believing I was invisible, she told the crowd. I cleaned conference rooms where powerful people made decisions that affected millions of lives. I emptied trash cans filled with secrets. I mopped floors walked on by those who thought they ruled the world. In the front row, Damian Cruz sat next to Sarah, both smiling proudly. Behind them, her father's former colleagues, the honest ones, applauded. But invisibility taught me something that all the law textbooks in the world couldn't teach. It taught me that justice doesn't come from the courtroom or the boardroom or the corner office. Justice comes from ordinary people who refuse to stay silent when they witness wrongdoing. Anna paused, looking out at the young faces in the audience. Some of you will become partners at prestigious firms. Some will become judges or politicians or corporate lawyers. But I challenge you to remember the cleaning lady who sees everything, the security guard who hears everything, the secretary who knows everything. Remember that intelligence should never be judged by a uniform. And remember that no one, absolutely no one, is too small to change the world. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. After the ceremony, Anna walked across Harvard Yard to a quiet bench beneath an old oak tree. She opened a small wooden box and pulled out her father's law book, worn and cherished. She'd added her own note inside the front cover. Dad, I kept my promise. Justice waited for me, just like you said it would. Your invisible daughter found her voice. Love always, Anna. As she sat there, Sarah joined her on the bench. No longer the withdrawn teenager, but a confident young woman starting college in the fall. Are you happy now? Sarah asked. A complete sentence, spoken clearly. Anna smiled and put her arm around her sister. Yes, sweetheart. I think Dad will be proud. In the distance, church bells chimed the hour. Anna closed the book and stood up, ready to face whatever came next. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer afraid. She was Anna Whitmore, attorney at law, protector of the powerless, voice for the voiceless. And her story was just beginning. Today, the Anna Whitmore Foundation provides legal aid to families destroyed by corruption. The Whitmore Law Clinic offers free representation to those who can't afford justice. And in conference rooms across the country, powerful people think twice before assuming that the invisible person in the corner isn't listening, isn't learning, isn't preparing to fight back. Because sometimes the most important person in the room is the one no one notices. Sometimes the smallest voice carries the greatest truth. And sometimes justice comes not from those who wear the robes or carry the briefcases, but from those who simply refuse to let wrong go unpunished. Anna Whitmore learned what her father always knew. The law isn't about power or prestige or profit. It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves. And no one, absolutely no one, is too small to make that difference.